Next, Amnesty International says Myanmar's military is making a land grab in Rakhine State, trying to remake and to reshape it. Some before and after satellite images show some pretty stark changes. Now, you can see before on the left here where there was a burned village, and then compare that to the image on the right, exactly where that village was. There are a number of new structures. Now, in another image, you can see where villages were burned on the left, and on the right, new structures erected in the middle of the farmland, as well as new helipads. Amnesty says that the reshaping of the region appears to be designed to hold more security forces and non-Rohingya, another deterrent to repatriating refugees who fled. Now, hundreds of thousands of Rohingya Muslims have fled Myanmar's brutal crackdown, crossing the border into Bangladesh. The UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Myanmar spoke in front of the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva. And earlier, I spoke with Yanghee Lee, and she is becoming more convinced that the abuse that Myanmar denies bears the hallmark of genocide.
Well, it's a long process, actually, what happened in Myanmar. The long discrimination and policies against the Rohingyas and laws and practices. And to identify a situation as genocide is really something that a court can do. But at the moment, if what we are looking at from the point of the Genocide Prevention Convention, all of the elements are there that point to possible crimes of genocide that was committed in Rakhine.
And using the term genocide, is that what's needed to make sure that justice is carried out for the Rohingya, and in what form?
Whatever term you use, we must make sure that it leads to a full accountability mechanism so that at the end, justice will be served to the victims of the atrocities that occurred in Rakhine.
There's the crime of genocide, or something akin to genocide, and there's the additional crime of doing nothing to stop it. Is that something that Aung San Suu Kyi is guilty of?
I think the civilian government cannot escape from any criticism or any decision that the government knowingly did nothing or knowingly did not prevent or even stop what was happening in Rakhine the past couple years.
In your latest report, you uncovered some extremely cruel acts of violence against Rohingya women. What have some Rohingya women been forced to endure?
Oh, the women had to, the gang rape, the multiple rape, the violent acts of rape and violent acts of physical torture. These acts are something that women had to bear. But what was even harder for these women was to see their children being raped in front of them, to see their babies being thrown in the fire, slaughtered, their children being tortured, and their boys being killed, and girls being, their breasts are sliced out, and just the cruelest, most unimaginable kind of acts of violence committed against women and boys and girls.
So what's the next step here? How can we end the violence, end the persecution of the Rohingya?
This is why I have recommended in my report that immediately the United Nations should set up a documentation center in Cox's Bazar for the duration of 3 years. This is a center focused at collecting evidence, mapping, and for further down the road, we will be able to feed in all this information into a new accountability mechanism that will be or could be set up in the future. Right now, Cox's Bazar is where about 1 million people are taking refuge, and about more than 800,000 from the past 2 years. And before memory fades and before people start to be relocated or redisplaced, I think every testimony, has to be properly accounted, and for all those people who are responsible for each and individual crimes and collective crimes must be held accountable in a future court.